Good afternoon. Welcome to the National Press Club. My name is Sonia Hilgren. I am president of the National Press Club and editor of Farm Journal. I'd like to welcome club members and their guests in the audience today, as well as those of you watching on C-SPAN, listening on National Public Radio, or on the global internet computer network. Before introducing our head table, I would like to remind our members of upcoming speakers. On Wednesday, April 10th, Bud Greenspan, award-winning sports historian and official cinematographer of the Olympic Games, will talk about the status of amateur sports. On Friday, April 12th, singer Julio Iglesias will talk about a range of topics, including his work with UNICEF. And on Tuesday, April 16th, attorney Morris Dees reports on the rise of the militia movement 1 year after the Oklahoma City bombing. Transcripts and radio and audio and video tapes of Press Club luncheons are available by calling 1-800-NPC-2334. If you have any questions for our speaker, please write them on the cards provided at your table and pass them up to me. I will ask as many as time permits. I'd now like to introduce our head table guests and ask them to stand briefly when their names are called. From your right, Christopher Hitchens, columnist, The Nation, and Vanity Fair. Please hold your applause until I've listed all of them. Alex Papaneoulas. I messed that up, didn't I? I can't read my H and my N. I'll start over again. Alex Papa. This is not very funny. Papa Helas of Kathamarni, one of the largest Greek daily newspapers. Thomas Niles, U.S. Ambassador to Greece. Steve Labaton, New York Times. Ioannis Papantonio, National Economy Minister of Greece. Wendy Koch, Hearst Newspapers, member of the Board of Governors of the National Press Club. Mrs. Daphne Simitis. Peggy Robertson, freelance journalist and chairman of the National Press Club Speakers Committee. Theodoros Pangalos, Foreign Minister of Greece. Ike Pappas Network Productions and member of the Press Club Speakers Committee who arranged today's luncheon. And Lucas Silas, Ambassador of Greece. Tom Rhodes, Times of London. Ralph Begleiter, CNN. And Demetrios Apokis, Greek National Television. The acceptance earlier this year by the Greek Parliament of Costas Simitis, the governing Socialist Party's choice to succeed the ailing Andreas Papandreou as Prime Minister, marked a turning point. In office less than 3 months, Mr. Simitis' new government, a mix of the old guard, Papandreou loyalists, and youthful party reformers, has already become known for change in Greece's relations with the rest of Europe. As a cabinet member, Mr. Simitis was often critical of Papandreou's less than enthusiastic approach to the European Union. Now, as Prime Minister, he is developing more ties with the rest of the continent and with the United States, which he believes will quicken the pace of modernization of his nation, one of his central goals. Under Mr. Simitis' direction, Greece, the only Balkan member of NATO, is also expected to be more proactive in the military alliance. These issues are on the agenda when he meets with President Clinton tomorrow. One of the founders of the Pan-Hellenic Socialist Party, along with Mr. Papandreou, Mr. Simitis openly broke with him last year and demanded a timetable for his retirement. He formed an alliance with prominent pro-Europeans in the Greek parliament, a coalition he used to gain the premiership when Papandreou withdrew from office because of his health. Mr. Simitis faces a challenge of reducing the public deficit by cutting government spending. But perhaps his most difficult task will be convincing already economically crunched workers to go along with more austerity, especially as Mr. Simitis tries to win their votes in next year's election. Unlike Mr. Papandreou, who was seen as the last of the highly visible and vocal giants who dominated Greek politics after World War II, Mr. Simitis is known for his technocratic, low-key style of governing. A lawyer with a background in economics and degrees from Great Britain and Germany, he is expected to confront problems in a more pragmatic, less ideological way as Greece prepares to enter the next century and the dawn of the next millennium, the subject of his remarks today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the National Press Club the Prime Minister of Greece, Costas Simitis.
Ladies and gentlemen, on the eve of the 21st century, Greece stands ready to tackle the major challenges that she needs to face the aspirations of her citizens. These challenges span the social, political, economic, and cultural aspects of Greek life. These challenges of the transforming economic, social, and international environment demand of policymakers the clear definition and enunciation of policy priorities. Our goal is to build a vigorous and strong nation. We aim at safeguarding the creative, dynamic presence of Greece in the international scene, at expanding our alliances, and at playing an important role in our part of the world. Greece is and will remain a guarantor for peace, stability, friendship, and cooperation. National sovereignty and the country's territorial integrity constitutes the foundation of our foreign policy. It is our goal to strengthen our presence by undertaking initiatives in the international scene, in international organizations, and in bilateral relations. European integration is another priority. In this context, we aim at safeguarding parity among the member states of the European Union. In the wider European context, we aim at protecting our national security interests, at strengthening democratic institutions, and at safeguarding human rights. We will promote policies which will allow Greece to use its position in the southeastern flank of Europe to assist countries of Central and Eastern Europe, as well as those of the Black Sea Rim, to overcome their structural deficiencies and problems of transition. Greece's geographical position, as well as her good relations with all parties, will also allow her to play a role in the development of countries of the Mediterranean Rim, acting as a bridge to the European Union. In the framework of decisions already taken, we attach high priority to the accession of Cyprus to the European Union, and we will continue to support all efforts for a peaceful and just solution of the Cyprus problem. As far now the relations between Greece and the United States are concerned, we want the furtherance of our constructive relationship with the United States. We will seek actions that will give our relations a new and richer context. Our objective is for Greece to become a positive factor in developments and a point of reference in the geopolitical map being shaped in our region. Economic relations between our countries are a reflection of the good state of cooperation achieved in political issues and in other areas of mutual interest. Nevertheless, there is still significant room for further amelioration in both the volume and the composition of trade flows. There is also room for deepening cooperation in a wider, less traditional context. At the same time, we are attempting to exploit the potential of the emerging markets in the Balkans, in the Black Sea region, and in the Mediterranean basin. The outreach of the US and Greece in those parts of the world are definitely complementary, be it in cultural or economic matters. Greece wishes to express her keen interest in the realization of direct American investment and the encouragement of collaboration between Greek and American firms in partnership or in other forms of cooperation. We are hopeful that the operation of the Greek Investment Center, known colloquially as one-stop shop, will, by simplifying and streamlining procedures relating to foreign investment, answer vital concerns of foreign investors. We wish to express our belief that American and Greek firms can collaborate by taking advantage of their complementary elements, as well as by extending their cooperation in areas and regions beyond their current reach. We have demonstrated in practice our determination to proceed to the necessary institutional adjustments that will allow complete harmonization with the emerging international framework of economic and financial transactions. Such adjustments will eliminate the obstacles in the strengthening of our bilateral economic relations. Along these lines, we have introduced a series of measures for improving the protective framework for intellectual property rights, for the full adoption of the procurement code of the World Trade Organization, and for other issues. It is time that we upgrade the cooperation and we strike a mutually beneficial balance in our bilateral economic relations by means of concrete and practical measures. Our administrations could effectively monitor such a process. In our view, our primary target should be to meet the challenges of the future and to secure the optimal prerequisites that the business communities of our country set in order to embark on common entrepreneurial action on the basis of their complementary strategic advantages. The Balkans. Turning to the southeastern European region, our relations with the Balkan states will continue to be focused on the re-establishment and stabilization of peace in the region within today's established borders and constitutional realities. Greece intends to cooperate and contribute by diplomatic means by making use of her capacity as a member state of the European Union, NATO, the Council of Europe, the Western European Alliance, as well as by her good relations with her neighbors, namely Albania, the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, FYROM, Bulgaria, Serbia and Montenegro, the new Yugoslavia, and Romania. The main objectives of our diplomatic activity in the Balkans are a conference of the Balkan states aiming at the adoption of a regional agreement that will safeguard the respect of borders, will encourage good neighborliness and cooperation, and will promote the protection of human rights in general and of minorities in particular. In so doing, the danger of conflagration in delicate areas will be lessened. We want the steady improvement of bilateral relations of Greece with the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia on the basis of the Interim Accord of New York, placing especially emphasis on the concrete definition and implementation of its provisions of economic and financial nature. It must be stressed that the accord is of 7-year duration, It may be replaced with a more comprehensive agreement once the problem of the name of that state is finally resolved. Our objective is to consider the expanding of NATO's scheme for the Initiative for Peace to include the Balkan states, which have not already been incorporated, and also toward Russia. We want the further improvement of our relations with Albania. Our main economic objectives with respect to the Balkan region are the development of an institutional framework to foster economic cooperation with the countries of the south of the Balkan Peninsula to facilitate both private entrepreneurial activity and investing in infrastructure projects. The pursuit of investments in the form of joint ventures, including those with a US party as a partner. Joint ventures involving Greek firms are already numerous in Bulgaria and Albania. The major upgrading of infrastructure currently underway in northern Greece will convey substantial external benefits to bordering countries as Albania, Fyrom, and Bulgaria. The planning of alternative supply and transport routes for raw materials from the areas of the Black Sea to the Mediterranean via the Balkans. Our area has the capacity, as yet unrealized, of acting as a nodal point in all kinds of international networks. Transport, road, rail and air, energy, oil, gas and electricity, shipping and communications. We want wider economic cooperations with the regions of the Black Sea Rim, both bilaterally and through regional cooperation formations. Our relations with Russia and the other states of Central and Eastern Europe have been developing at all levels of possible cooperation. Now I'll come to a well-known problem, the relations between Greece and Turkey. Greece is taking an active role in efforts to integrate and develop the countries of the southern Mediterranean Rim. It is the responsibility of all countries in the region to ensure that the Oslo Accord between Israel and the PLO is only the starting point of a lasting process for peace and prosperity. The peace and democratization process, which is solidifying in the Middle East, paves the way for new prospects for Greece, Cyprus, and the southeastern Mediterranean. Greece recognizes and understands Turkey's necessity for a European orientation. It is imperative that such a perspective is matched by the safeguarding of European political values, of human rights, and of democratic principles. The norms of customary international law, the provisions of international treaties, and the unequivocal will of Greece to stand up for her sovereign rights constitutes the basis of Greek-Turkish relations. We express our deep disquiet for the recent events connected to the islets of Imia. In the course of these events, Turkey contested the territorial sovereignty of Greece with both words and deeds, going as far as to land a military force on Greek soil. This contestation constitutes a qualitative change in the nature of Turkish claims in the Aegean. Until now, Turkey was casting doubt or demanding rights pertaining to the sea or to the air. The recent crisis shows that we have entered a new phase. In this phase, the subjects of discussion and dispute are the land of Greece itself, as well as the titles of sovereignty over it. Turkey, careful first to dispute Greek territory, is now inviting us to a dialogue without preconditions in order to improve our mutual relations. Of course, we do not reject dialogue with any country. Equally, we are not prepared to negotiate unconditionally and with no prospect of a satisfactory solution. Our refusal to negotiate with Turkey at this moment is based on three considerations. Firstly, on our knowledge that negotiations, by nature a political and not a legal means of resolution of problems, cannot ensure a final and permanent solution which can be binding for both sides, and we want final and permanent solutions. We have a negative experience of negotiations with Turkey in the 70s. Greece then attempted to negotiate with Turkey in order to jointly formulate an agreement to refer the matter of the Aegean seabed to the International Court of Justice. We soon realized that Turkey, on a range of matters, would first agree only to retract the agreement later. At the same time, it was continuously playing more issues on the negotiating table, rendering thus an agreement increasingly distant. As could have been expected, these negotiations were fruitless and were discontinued after a few years, after 7 or 8 years. And thirdly, I will mention our unwillingness and our inability to negotiate about national territory whose possession by Greece is sanctioned by international treaties and on which it has exercised sovereignty unhindered for the last half-century. Yet, in asking us to negotiate on the case of the islets of Imia, Turkey is doing exactly that. In contrast to negotiations, the International Court of Justice is the only secure means for a definitive and binding settlement. As far as the issue of the continental shelf is concerned, Greece is ready to proceed to a compromise, an agreement that would refer the dispute to judicial settlement. In the case that Turkey chooses to have recourse to a judicial organ on the islets issue, Greece stands, of course, ready to participate. Bilateral relations with Turkey will be very different in the basic legal issues if the basic legal issues are set on the way of resolution through the process of the International Court. In the resulting climate of reduced tension, Greece will have no objection to discuss with Turkey other outstanding issues as well as bilateral matters of mutual interest. Cyprus. On the Cyprus issue, Greece is in no way prepared to consent to the fait accompli which has been imposed by violent means. I am referring, of course, to Turkey's military occupation of 40% of Cyprus territory and to the forced expulsion of that regions of Greek Cypriot residents from their homes. In unbroken and unwavering solidarity with the government of Cyprus, we will continue our efforts for the development of the necessary conditions for a peaceful abolition of the fait accompli. We strive for the implementation of the United Nations Security Council resolution for Cyprus, as well as for the development of many-sided initiatives for a fair and viable solution. Foreign policy alone does not guarantee success in building a strong nation. A strategy is necessary, a strategy that supplies the preconditions that will allow the potential inherent in our economy and our society to be realized. Such a strategy can encompass a host of elements such as stability of the macroeconomy, sustainable development in environmental terms, an effective and efficient public administration, social cohesion, and an efficient education system. The discussion and hence agreement on clearly defined priorities, the coordination of activities and social and political mechanisms to create consensus are all necessary. We consider that the deepening and the proper functioning of our institutions are essential preconditions for development and social and economic progress. The world economy has ceased to recognize frontiers. The bonds which link up the Greek economy and the international economic system are unbreakable. Greece participates in some of the most important international systems of economic integration, the European Union and the World Trade Organization. The economic development of the country, the well-being of her citizens, the quality of their lives, the cohesion of our community, as well as foreign policy issues, depend on our integration in such international systems, on the way we act, on the roles we assign to ourselves. A country like Greece cannot operate outside the global system. The way to advance is to exploit the rules of the global economy and the global society to advantage. In the economic sphere, we do not intend to entrench ourselves behind defensive and barren protectionism. In the international sphere, we aim to use what power and influence we have in direction of peace and stability. We want to be a country of peace and stability, and I think we have worked in this sense and we will achieve it in future. Thank you.
Mr. Prime Minister, what is the single most important issue in U.S.-Greek relations?
I don't think there is a single most important issue because relations are very good. So we have to tackle different problems and we are working at them. Different problems like, as I mentioned, a better economic cooperation. There are problems of intellectual property rights, problems of certain investments that do not progress. But if I would say a single issue, that is better cooperation, better understanding, better working together so that we achieve more than we have achieved up to now.
You had been scheduled to meet with Commerce Secretary Ron Brown on your visit here. Will his untimely death slow your plans for U.S.-Greek economic cooperation?
I'm very sorry for what happened, and I was very sorry that such an accident was possible. I'll meet Mr. Rubin, and we will try to continue the projects we have already discussed with the American Embassy in Athens, and we will have discussed with late Secretary Brown.
With Greece's strategic position, do you favor the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Bosnia this year?
We want to apply the Dayton Accord as agreed by all parties concerned.
Will you ask President Clinton to make a greater effort to intervene in the Cyprus problem?
We will discuss with President Clinton the Cyprus problem, and I think that all members of NATO and all allies of Greece should try to solve this problem. This problem exists since 25 years, and that's a very, very, very long time. I think it's time now to close it, to finish it.
Mr. Prime Minister, if Greece and Turkey keep arming themselves and the conflict in Cyprus still exists, what will it take to solve the problem if you continue to keep arming yourselves?
I am of the opinion that we should not arm ourselves. Greece, in any case, spends quite a lot of money on armament, and I think we could spend this money in a more in another directions that would help the development of our country. So what's necessary is to begin a process of de-escalation, a process of solving the problems. And as I suggested, the first step in order to solve the problems is that Turkey goes to the International Court and asks the International Court to examine the claims the Turkey has on the islets of Imia and other claims, possible claims, I don't know what exactly claims on the Dodecanese. This is a first, this is a major, this is a very important step, because it's the first time in the Europe after the World War that a country demands to change the borders. And the peace in Europe has existed since the end of the World War, because none of the European countries has ever put a claim on territory of other states and has not asked the change of borders. This is the first time, and we should not allow it. At the end of the 20th century, there are rules accepted by everybody that can be applied. There is international law, there are the international treaties, and there is the International Court of Justice. So we cannot decide such cases with the force of arms. We can decide these cases with international law and the International Court of Justice. I think Greece asked something that is accepted by all nations, and that's why I think that Turkey should reconsider its position, and if Turkey thinks it has claims on the islets, they should go to The Hague.
What about the U.S. position with regard to solving this problem? Are you prepared possibly to negotiate over Cyprus under U.S. auspices?
The U.S. and the European Union have already undertaken initiatives in order to solve the Cyprus problem. So we are cooperating in these initiatives. We are ready to help in order that the problem is solved.
Mr. Prime Minister, your defense minister called on Russia, Armenia, Iran, Iraq, and Syria to form a patriotic front against Turkey. How can such a call contribute to peace between Greece and Turkey? Can you explain, please?
Mr. Arsenis, defense minister, did not call on these countries to form a common alliance. He said that there must be relations not only with European and NATO countries, but also with countries that are in other parts of the world, in the Middle East and Asia.
Is it true that Greece has lifted its veto of admitting Cyprus into the customs union?
This is not an exact question. Greece has never vetoed the entrance of Cyprus to the European Union. Probably it's a question concerning Turkey. Greece, there is a customs union between Turkey and the European Union. This customs union is being applied, and one part of this customs union is a protocol according to which certain Turkish projects will be financed. And Greece has vetoed the application of this protocol up to now, because we have asked that the customs union agreement is applied in its entirety. In the customs union agreement, it's written, that's the first principle, that there must be friendly, neighborly relations between Turkey and the countries of the European Union. And as I said, Turkish soldiers were on Greek soil. I don't think that anybody thinks this is a friendly relation, so we must clear first the matter. We have said last time when the Council of the Foreign Ministers in the European Union discussed this matter, that if Turkey says that they stick to international law, to international agreements, they say that they won't apply violence and no threats of war, and they declare that they go to the International Court of The Hague, we agree that the customs union agreements are applied in their entirety.
Could you predict a day when Turkey would become a full-fledged member of the European Union?
I cannot predict it, and really that does not depend on us. You should take into consideration that there are a series of problems concerning not Turkey, but countries that have not the same cultural background, that have problems of big populations and unemployment. So it's not Greece who will question the membership of Turkey. I think other countries will be far more against such a membership.
Do you fear that U.S.-Turkish relations are strengthening at the expense of Greece?
No, we have good relations. I'm here. I will discuss with President Clinton. I'll discuss with Mr. Perry, with Mr. Christopher. We'll explain our position, and I think our relations are good with the United States, are as good as the relations of Turkey.
Are you concerned about the recent announcement that for the first time Israel will be using Turkish airspace?
No, I'm not concerned because, as I said, and also in my speech, and I will repeat, we don't want to press on Turkey and to create a situation that Turkey cannot have friendly relations with other countries. We just want that in the Aegean, the principles of international law are applied, and there is peace and stability in the region. So if Turkey wants to have friendly relations with other countries, Israel or any other country, they should have it. They should do it. Why not? It helps all of us.
I have two questions about terrorism. In the past, many members of the Greek parliament visited the PKK camp in Lebanon's Bekaa Valley. PKK's political arm has offices in Athens. Why do you support PKK, which the U.S. State Department calls a vicious terror organization? And why do you have an agreement with Syria against Turkey, which also is regarded as supporting terrorism?
We have no agreement with Syria against Turkey. And as far as the Kurdish exiles are concerned, we are a country where there are many exiles from many regions of the world. And we are for civil liberties, we are for human rights, and when exiles come to Greece, according to international regulations of the United Nations and according to our legislations, we give them political asylum. When they have political asylum, they can be political active, but in no case they can develop terrorist or armed activities, and we take care that such things does not happen.
The U.S. government has recently adopted a new policy toward Aegean issues, that indeed they should be settled at The Hague, as you request. Why has your government not made more of this change in the U.S. position?
The U.S. position was not presented exactly. We ask that Turkey goes to The Hague. It's not Greece who should go to The Hague, because Greece has no claim. And Greece has already, since 1994, accepted the jurisdiction of the International Court of The Hague in all matters, And so every country, and Turkey, can go to The Hague and ask the court to decide on a matter. We, Greece, have already said that if somebody has a claim against us, he can go to the court and ask the court to decide. So why should we go and ask the court to decide on our matter with Turkey when Turkey has not yet accepted the jurisdiction of the court? It's for Turkey to make the step.
What would you do differently if you had to handle the recent Aegean crisis again? Do you still have confidence in your defense minister?
Of course I have a great confidence in my defense minister, and if I had to handle the crisis, I would do the same thing that I have done.
How have Greece's relations with Armenia developed, and how have these ties been reflected in relations between the Greek and Armenian communities in the United States?
We try to develop our relations with Armenia, and several times in the last 3 years, delegations from Armenia and representatives of the Armenian government were in Athens, and also representatives of the Greek government and of Greek entrepreneurs have visited Armenia. Now, it's not very easy to develop relations because the societies are different, the problems that each country has different, but when we have a common ground, we do cooperate, and I can mention as example the drilling in order to find oil. Greece has helped Armenia in this sense, and also as far as energy is concerned, electricity, production of electricity, and renewable energy resources, there is also a cooperation. So we have good relations.
Could you please comment on the State Department's travel ban in the Athens airport?
That was a very unfortunate decision, and I think it was a decision that does not reflect reality at the Athens airport. Mrs. Clinton was in Athens, she was very secure.
What can modern-day Greece learn from the ancient Greeks about how to solve Greece's current economic and international problems?
The only answer I can give them, the ancient Greeks were people who were logical and realistic. So I would say we should be also very logical and realistic.
Greece is the major producer of canned peaches in the European Union. U.S. canned fruit producers have charged abuse in the fruit support program in the European Union is investigating alleged fraud in the Greek canned fruit sector. The European Union has proposed reforms, and the U.S. may file a formal complaint about Greek canned peaches exports. What will you do to reform the system?
I don't know exactly the case. Indeed, Greece is the biggest exporter of canned peaches in the world. One of the biggest exporters of canned peaches in the world. But we should know that agricultural policy in the countries of the European Union is decided by the Commission. So if there is something wrong, it's not something that depends on Greek government. It's a regulation of the Commission, and this is a matter between the Commission and the United States.
In this era of global trade, does Greece practice protectionism? That is, do you try to keep out competing industries and products?
Oh, I have no such examples. In certain areas, as far as procurement is concerned, there are special regulations that were accepted by the European Union, the Commission of the European Union, and these regulations will last for a few years, I think until 98 or 99. But as far as other countries of the European Union concerned, there is no protection. The market is free. Everyone can import whatever he wants. And also, everyone can import to Greece whatever he wants in the same conditions he can import it in the European Union. There is no protectionist policy, and in our view, such a protectionist policy would also have no sense, because in a global economy, we must have good trade relations with other countries, and if we protect, they will also protect. So we do not want to protect, so they cannot protect against us.
What are the Greek government's specific plans to improve the investment climate in the country and to facilitate procedures within the bureaucracy for both domestic and foreign investors?
You don't need specific plans in order to help investment. What you need is to have economic stability. And indeed, in the last years, we have made a great progress. We had an inflation that was more than 15%. Our inflation now is about 8%. We had a big public deficit. We have tried to cut it down, and we have cut it down. We have made a great progress as far as the stability is concerned. And that's why, if you look at the numbers, you will see that in the last year, there was a very big progress in private investment, Greek investment, and foreign investment in Greece. The second part of the question is?
The second part is the bureaucracy.
And in order to help investment in Greece, there are certain changes, institutional changes. We have created the one-stop shop. This means that if an investor wants to get the permissions he needs to invest, he does not need to go anymore to several offices, 6, 7, 8, or 10, in order to get the permissions, but he goes to one only office, and this office looks after all the necessary permissions, and so he can get it far more quicker and with not so much red tape as previously. We have to change, except this, we have to change the bureaucratic customs. This is not very easy in a country that has lived with protectionism for many, many years, but things are changing, and I think that it's far easier now to invest in Greece than it was a few years before. And capital flows, that's very important, are now free according to the regulations of the European Union. You can import your capital and export your capital without any controls. So if you want, you can bring your money, you invest, you sell, and you take your money if you are not content with your investment. This means that the conditions are the same as in any other country of the European Union.
What about the country's economic plans regarding privatization as well as property rights?
Greece had a very big public sector. And it had a very big public sector because in the years before the First World War, at the eve of the last century, railroads, for example, were built by the Greek state, and other public utilities were built by the Greek state. And after the Second World War, also public utilities and the main industries were built by the constructed by the Greek state because no private entrepreneurs took the initiative. So we have and we had a big public sector, but we have begun a few years ago with a program of privatization, and up to now we have successfully privatized enterprises. In other cases, as in the case of the shipyards, privatization was not yet successful. This depends on the market. But the will of our government is to pursue this privatization process. We think that most of these enterprises that were constructed by the Greek state should now, because they are part of the market, belong to private enterprise.
When will the next general election in Greece take place? Before or after the convention, the political convention in July?
In October '97.
The Turkish ambassador to the United States recently remarked that the greatest threat to Turkish society is the politicization of Islam. Does this pose any threat to Greece as well?
Oh, we think that countries like Turkey or other countries of Africa or the Middle East are free to decide what political and social system they have. And their relations to us must be governed by international law. If this is the principle, then there is no threat from what development whatsoever. That's their problem. That's they should decide on it. We have not to mix up in this developments.
Are there any plans to allow American citizens to take the money resulting from sale of inherited property out of the country?
As I said before, now the capital flow between Greece and the countries of the European Union is free. This is a principle that we will try to apply to all countries. The Greek economy has not yet stabilized to an extent that we can be sure that such a flow will not create flow from Greece to the United States will not create problems. But in any case, that's something that must be done, and it will be done in the next years.
If Turkey moves to take over another islet, as it recently did, will you resist this by force, or will you back off as you did in the recent incident?
We didn't back off. We did not want war. And I think that nobody wants war. Nobody wants people to be killed without sense. But this does not mean that in future cases we will not decide to fight. We are ready to fight, and we will fight when this is necessary.
What do you want to be your legacy as Prime Minister?
It's too early to decide on it.
Before I ask the last question, I would like to thank you for coming today, to give you a certificate of appreciation, to give you a mug from the National Press Club, and to give you a book about American presidents from photographs by George Thames, the late photographer of the New York Times.
Thank you very much. There's the important last question.
This is the important last question. Greek Americans form a large voting bloc in the United States. There is some speculation that the White House wanted you to visit at this time to demonstrate its concern for Greek Americans looking forward to our election. Do you believe that's true?
This is a question which you should put to the White House. I think in any case, Greek Americans should vote according to their ideas, to their interests, to what they think necessary for the United States where they live.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to thank our staff members, Melissa Bender and Lisa Lindstrom, Chad Taylor, Melanie Abdo-Dermott, and Howard Rothman for organizing today's. And thank all of you for coming, and good day.
Thank you very much.
Would everyone please stay seated until the Prime Minister leaves? Thank you very much. No problem. Thank you so much.
I thank you also.